I was standing on a sun-warmed balcony in Santorini when I realized how quiet my phone had been. No missed calls, no frantic messages, just the distant sound of waves crashing against white cliffs and the hum of tourists drifting through narrow streets below. For the first time in years, my life felt still. Beautifully, intentionally still. This trip to Greece wasn't impulsive. It was earned. 3 years of overtime shifts, canceled weekends, and saying, maybe next time, to myself had led to this moment. I had saved carefully, planned obsessively, and chosen Greece because it felt symbolic, ancient, enduring, untouched by the chaos of my family back home. Before I left, I stood in my apartment doorway, suitcase by my side, keys in my hand. I hesitated, then walked across the hall to my mother's apartment. She opened the door with her familiar tired smile. "Here," I said, placing my keys in her palm, "only for emergencies." She laughed softly. "You're so dramatic." "Of course, I'm your mother." I nodded, ignoring the small knot forming in my chest. Growing up, I had learned to silence that feeling. Questioning my mother always led to guilt. Doubt always meant I was being ungrateful. I had been the responsible one for as long as I could remember. While other kids worried about grades and friendships, I worried about utility bills and groceries. When my father left, I became my mother's emotional support. When my younger sister Lena struggled, again and again, I became her safety net. Lena was chaos wrapped in charm. She burned through jobs, relationships, and money with alarming speed, yet somehow always landed softly. If I fell, I learned to stand alone. If she fell, the whole family rushed to cushion her. "You're strong," my mother used to say. "Lina needs more help." At first, I believed strength meant sacrifice. By the time I bought my apartment, small, bright, and entirely mine, I had already given so much of myself away that I barely celebrated. My mother's reaction wasn't excitement, it was expectation. "Good," she said. "Now at least one of my children is stable." I told myself that was praise. In Greece, the days unfolded gently. I wandered through ruins older than my family's problems. I drank coffee slowly, watched sunsets melt into the sea, and slept without anxiety clawing at my chest. For the first time, no one needed anything from me. On the fourth day, while sitting at a cafe overlooking the caldera, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my neighbor, Mark. "Hey, weird question. Are you letting your sister stay in your apartment?" I frowned, rereading it twice. "Why?" I typed back. A pause. Then I saw her bringing in furniture. Thought I should ask. The world tilted. I stared at the screen. My heart beat suddenly loud in my ears. Furniture. Lena didn't own furniture. She never stayed anywhere long enough to need it. I called my mother immediately. "Oh, that," she said, as if I'd asked about the weather. Lina needed somewhere to stay. I laughed once, sharp and confused. "Mom, she has my keys." "Well, yes. I gave them to her." The cafe noise faded. "Why would you do that?" "You're not home," she replied, irritation creeping into her voice. "Your place was empty. She needed help. That's my home," I said slowly. "You didn't ask me. You would have said no," she snapped. "And family doesn't say no." That sentence hit harder than the betrayal itself. Family doesn't say no. I ended the call with shaking hands. My coffee had gone cold. The view I had loved moments earlier now felt distant, unreal. I tried to tell myself it was temporary. Lena would crash for a few days. Mom would apologize. Things would return to normal. But deep down, a quieter truth surfaced, one I had ignored my entire life. My trust wasn't seen as a gift. It was seen as permission. And somewhere between the white cliffs of Greece and the locked door waiting for me back home, I began to understand that this trip wasn't just a vacation. It was the beginning of something breaking. I didn't sleep that night. The sea outside my hotel window was restless, waves crashing with a violence that mirrored my thoughts. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured my apartment, my couch, my kitchen, my bedroom, being touched, moved, claimed by someone who had never earned the right to be there. By morning, my phone was full of messages. None from my mother. One was from Lena. "Relax, I'm just staying a while. You weren't even using the place." My fingers trembled as I typed back. "Lena, you don't have permission to be there." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then Mom gave me the keys. "If you have a problem, talk to her." That's when the next message came. The one that made my chest tighten so hard I had to sit down. "By the way, I changed the locks. Needed privacy." I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Changed. The locks. I was locked out of my own home. I called her immediately. She didn't answer. I called my mother. This time, she picked up on the 3rd ring. She changed the locks, I asked, my voice barely holding together. Well, yes, Mom said. Your way. It's safer. For who? I snapped. May E or her. You're being dramatic, she replied. Lina's had a hard time. You always land on your feet. She doesn't. The words felt familiar, like an old wound being reopened. I pay that mortgage, I said quietly. I pay the bills. That's not her house. She's your sister, Mom said sharply. What kind of person would deny family shelter? The kind of person who was never allowed to say no. I wanted to scream. Instead, I hung up. I spent the rest of the day wandering aimlessly through narrow streets, barely noticing the beauty around me. Every sound felt distant, muffled, as if I were underwater. My chest ached not just from anger, but from something heavier. Grief. I grieved the mother I thought I had, the one who would protect me, respect me, see me. That night, I scrolled through Lina's social media. There she was, on my balcony. My balcony, wine glass in hand, city lights behind her, the caption read, "New beginnings." Something inside me finally cracked. This wasn't desperation. This was entitlement. She hadn't asked because she didn't believe she needed to. She hadn't apologized because she didn't think she was wrong. And my mother hadn't defended me because, in her eyes, I existed to absorb the impact of Lina's failures. I thought back to all the times I had stepped in, paid her rent, covered her debts, let her sleep on my couch for a week that turned into months. Each time, I told myself it was temporary, that family helped family. But family shouldn't feel like theft. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I finally let myself cry. Not the quiet, controlled tears I'd perfected over the years, but the ugly kind, shaking, gasping, unrestrained. I cried for the little girl who learned early that love was conditional, for the woman who had mistaken endurance for strength. When the tears stopped, something else remained. Clarity. I wasn't overreacting, I wasn't selfish. I wasn't cruel. I had been betrayed, and betrayal, I realized, doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives in calm voices and familiar justifications. Sometimes it wears the face of the people you trust most. I opened my laptop and pulled up my apartment documents, deed, mortgage statements, utility bills. Everything in my name, everything proof of what I already knew. Legally, emotionally, morally, that place was mine. Lina had crossed a line. My mother had erased it. I closed the laptop slowly and took a deep breath. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to argue. And I definitely wasn't going to apologize for protecting what I had built. If they thought locking me out would silence me, they were wrong. It didn't make me weaker. It made me deliberate. And somewhere between betrayal and heartbreak, a new resolve took shape, quiet, controlled, and unstoppable. I woke up the next morning with a strange calm settling over me. The panic was gone. The tears had dried. What remained was focus, sharp and steady. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, sunlight slipping through thin curtains, and for the first time since arriving in Greece, I didn't feel like a tourist running from her life. I felt like someone finally ready to face it. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Lina. I made one call, to someone who wouldn't twist the truth or soften reality for the sake of family. My lawyer answered on the second ring. I explained everything, slowly, clearly. No emotion, just facts. By the time I finished, there was a pause on the other end of the line. "Did you give written permission?" he asked. "Napo, as your sister on the deed or lease." "No." "Then she's there illegally." The words landed like a switch flipping on. Illegal. For days, my mother had framed this as a moral issue, kindness versus cruelty, generosity versus selfishness. But the law didn't care about guilt trips or family dynamics. The law cared about ownership, and ownership was mine. I emailed over my documents: property deed, mortgage records, utility bills, security camera access. I hadn't even remembered the cameras until my lawyer mentioned them. "You can document everything," he said. "Changing locks without owner consent is a violation." I ended the call and sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. I wasn't powerless. Next, I called the building management. "My apartment has an unauthorized occupant," I said calmly. "Locks were changed without my consent." There was no argument, no hesitation, just procedure. They asked for proof. I sent it. Within an hour, I received confirmation access would be restored, and a formal notice issued. I imagined Lina inside my apartment, lounging comfortably, unaware that the ground beneath her was already shifting. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That afternoon, she posted another story online. Music playing, sunlight pouring through my windows. "Living my best life." I didn't respond. Silence was my armor. Instead, I booked an earlier flight home. When my mother finally called that evening, I answered. "Why aren't you responding to Lena?" she demanded. "Because I'm handling it," I replied evenly. There was a pause. Handling what? My property. Her voice sharpened. "Don't you dare embarrass your sister." I laughed softly, not in humor but disbelief. "You didn't worry about embarrassing me when you gave her my keys," I said. "She needed help, and I needed respect." She hung up. I felt no urge to call back. 2 days later, I landed home. I didn't go straight to my apartment. I let the process move ahead without my presence. I wanted this to be clean, quiet, unavoidable. The knock came that afternoon. Lena called me first. "What did you do?" she shouted. "Management says I have to leave." "I restored access to my apartment," I said calmly. "You went behind my back. You were in my home without permission." She laughed bitterly. Mom said it was fine. She doesn't own it. That was the moment the truth finally reached her. The bravado faded. The confidence cracked. "You wouldn't do this to me," she said. "We're family." I took a deep breath. "Family doesn't steal." She hung up. An hour later, my mother stood at my door, eyes red, voice trembling. "You could have just talked to us," she said. "I tried," I replied. "You didn't listen." She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped, because for the first time I wasn't asking for approval. I was enforcing a boundary, and boundaries, I had learned, only feel cruel to the people who benefit from you having none. That night, I finally unlocked my door, with a new set of keys in my hand. The apartment smelled faintly unfamiliar, but it was still mine, and so was my life. The apartment was quiet after Lena left, not the heavy silence of tension or grief, but a clean, open quiet, like the pause after a storm has passed. I walked through each room slowly, noticing what had changed. A different throw pillow, a chipped mug in the sink, small traces of someone who had treated my home like a temporary shelter instead of a sanctuary. I packed her things neatly into boxes and left them by the door for pickup. No note, no explanation. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. That evening, my mother called again. "I raised you better than this," she said, her voice thick with disappointment. I leaned against the kitchen counter and closed my eyes. "You raised me to be responsible," I replied. "You just never expected me to be responsible for myself." She scoffed. "You could have been kinder." "I was," I said softly. "For years." She didn't answer. The next few days were uncomfortable. Family group chats went quiet. Relatives sent vague messages about forgiveness and unity. No one asked how it felt to be locked out of my own home. No one apologized, and for the first time, I didn't chase closure. I changed the locks again, this time with paperwork and witnesses. I updated my security system. I removed my mother as an emergency contact. Each action felt strange, like learning to write with my other hand, but also empowering. Lena sent one final message. "I hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "I'm learning how to be." That was the truth. Happiness didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly, in pieces, sleeping without anxiety, coming home without dread, knowing my space, physical and emotional, was protected. Weeks passed. My mother eventually visited. She stood in the doorway, hesitant, as if unsure whether she was welcome. "This place looks nice," she said. "It always did," I replied. She nodded, eyes scanning the room. "Lena's staying with a friend." I waited for an apology that never came. Instead, she said she's having a hard time. I met her gaze calmly. "So am I, but I'm handling it." Something shifted then, not reconciliation, but recognition. She finally saw that the daughter who always bent had learned how to stand. She left soon after. That night, I sat on my couch, city lights flickering outside the window. I thought about Greece, the cliffs, the sea, the feeling of being far away from everything that hurt me. I realized something important. The revenge wasn't calling a lawyer. It wasn't forcing Lena out. It wasn't proving my mother wrong. The revenge was choosing myself without cruelty, without shouting, without becoming what they expected me to be. I didn't cut my family off in anger. I simply stopped offering access to the parts of me they didn't respect. And in doing so, I found something I had never truly had before. Peace. Somewhere in the quiet of my reclaimed home, I understood that betrayal had taken something from me, but it had also given me clarity. And clarity, once found, is impossible to lock out again.